Good morning. I appreciate all of you being here. We're here to discuss the potential impacts that Hurricane Michael is going to have on the state of Georgia. Behind me you see the agency heads of the departments that are involved in these preparations, and I'll let you speak to them in just a few minutes. I'll give you a brief overview. First of all, the track of the storm has apparently gravitated a little further north and northeast than we had originally anticipated. As a result, we have added about 16 additional counties, which brings our total number of counties up to 108. We think that this will cover the vast majority of the state that will be affected by the hurricane. One of the concerns is that this is coming in as a Category 4, with some possibility it could rise to a Category 5. We are hopeful that by the time it reaches the Georgia boundaries, that it will have died down somewhat and that the wind intensity will have dropped. However, we know that there's still going to be a considerable amount of damage from the wind and also from the flooding that is going to be associated with the rain. We've heard the report from each of our important agencies that are involved in these preparations, and I'm going to ask each of them to speak to you briefly, and I'll go through the list. First of all, Homer Bryson, who is the Director of GEMA and our Homeland Security. Director Bryson.
Thank you, Governor. I'll be real brief and sort of just hit the highlights, since the individual agencies will do a more detailed brief on their activities with this. As the Governor mentioned, the state of emergency has been expanded now to include 108 counties. In addition, 15 local counties have declared disasters on their own. We're at a full-scale activation here at the state level, and state personnel dedicated to the response of this storm currently stands at about 2,300 people, in addition to about 1,500 National Guardsmen. Our Department of Transportation alone has 1,400 people assigned and pre-positioned to respond. Department of Natural Resources has search and rescue and debris removal teams in place. State Patrol has 750 troopers standing by ready to deploy. Department of Corrections has 83 debris removal teams positioned. Georgia Forestry Commission has 10 chainsaw teams ready. We have our Air Operations Division up and operational with 9 helicopters dedicated to this operation. We currently have 2 shelters open in the state, one in Muskogee County, Columbus, and one in Bibb County in Macon. Additionally, there are 3 animal shelters that are open, one in Henry County, one in Peach County, and one in Bibb County. Sheltering is a concern and an issue. We're advertising where these shelters are open. There are some local comfort stations open at the county level in southwest Georgia. Additionally, Department of Natural Resources has opened up state parks for lodging opportunities there. Atlanta Motor Speedway has camping facilities available for those that need it, and Airbnb has over 150 homes here in Georgia that are open at no cost to evacuees. We have submitted requests and are preparing to pre-position supplies and materials that we think will be needed as soon as this storm clears and we're able to access those areas. And those supplies at this time include tarps and bottled water and MREs. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. I appreciate your preparation and the team that's working with you. And if you look around this command center, you will see a lot of people who are here who are working diligently to prepare for this storm. Going down the list, I'm going to ask Colonel Mark McDonough, the head of our Department of Public Safety, to speak to you about that issue.
Thank you, Governor. Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. As you heard the director say, over 750 of our folks will be ready to respond to the affected area. All 1,100 sworn are in Phase A. That means their sleeping bags and their pillows are in their car. So whatever needs to be done over the next few days, we'll be prepared to respond. In addition to that, all of our weigh stations are closed for enforcement purposes. In other words, if vehicles, supplies, material are moving on our interstates, they can bypass those stations and not be held up for any type of relief efforts that are going on. The stations themselves, though, can be accessed by vehicles. So if a trucker needs to go in and use the space, it'll be available to do so. In the morning, we'll be up and ready early. We'll be bringing our aviation assets in around from the west through Alabama to pre-position them in the morning so that working with GEMA and with FEMA, we'll already have the people airborne to do the assessments that need to be done right off the bat. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Colonel. Next is Commissioner Mark Williams of our Department of Natural Resources, and he'll advise you as to what his department is doing.
Thank you, Governor. DNR currently has 14 critical action teams and 14 debris removal teams fully prepared and awaiting deployment instructions. 4 of these teams have been pre-staged in Middle Georgia for rapid response. All game wardens are prepared to respond statewide. We have established a mobile command center staged in Perry that will allow us to establish a forward operating incident command post as the storm enters and moves through Georgia. We are prepared for search and rescue efforts in the event of flooding and have our swiftwater rescue boat staged for response. Additionally, all DNR vessels are ready for deployment. Evacuees may call our state parks to make reservations. We are waiving entrance fees for those who are seeking shelter. These guests should be prepared to be self-sufficient. We want to stress we accept pets at our parks. We currently have 1,222 evacuees in our state parks and anticipate and can accommodate that figure growing. You can get information at georgiastateparks.org. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Next, on the healthcare side of things, which always is a significant concern in times like this, is Dr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Governor. Public health has been actively involved in preparing for this. We basically have 18 health districts, all of which have the capacity to open shelters throughout the entire state of Georgia as needed. In addition to the 2 Red Cross shelters that were already mentioned in the Macon and Columbus area, there are multiple Good Samaritan shelters that are opening now or have already been opened. We had a request last night in the Valdosta district to supply 200 cots to one of those shelters. We're fortunate in that we have staged over 2,000 cots available throughout the state that we can use as needed. In addition, public health is responsible for the vulnerable populations throughout the state of Georgia, and we've been making plans so that if evacuations of those individuals were needed, we have the capacity to do that. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Doctor. Next is the Deputy Commissioner of the Georgia Department of Transportation, Mike Dover.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. This morning, Georgia DOT deployed crews from our northern districts down to join our South Georgia districts in Tifton, Albany, Statesboro, and Jessup. Currently, we have about 400 personnel in Southeast Georgia and 400 personnel in Southwest Georgia. Total, as has been mentioned before, is 1,400 personnel available. We have 8 bridge crews currently stationed in and around the South Georgia area. We'll focus on clearing the interstates and other hurricane evacuation routes first as soon as the storm passes. And then I want to remind everyone that a signal that is non-functioning due to loss of electric power is to be treated as a 4-way stop. It's critical. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Next is our Commissioner of Agriculture, Mr. Gary Black.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everyone. Our food safety teams are prepared for the aftermath of this storm, and we're looking forward to working to make sure that South Georgia is restored with all those resources, and certainly be assessing over the next couple of days. We do have 4 pet shelters that are open that we are working with private and local government entities. What's important also from the fuel side, fuel and measures division, we're working with the petroleum industry, with the convenience stores, No reported fuel shortages thus far, but certainly for protecting the integrity of the fuel supply is very important during this time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important to note that this storm, Michael, will strike deep into the heart of Georgia agriculture. 80% of our cotton crop is vulnerable, 50% of our peanut crop is vulnerable, and 100% of our nation-leading pecan crop is vulnerable and is at ground zero. I will be working with Secretary Perdue. We have a call at 5:30 today. Our federal partners are coming together to assist us. This is way beyond, we expect it to be way beyond any type of normal secretarial disaster. I ask you to pray for those farm families, those businesses that are connected, but let me assure them that we'll be working with our federal partners to restore order during the aftermath of this storm. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Next, representing the Georgia National Guard is General Simmons, who will report on those 1,500 National Guardsmen that we have asked to be deployed for this situation. General?
Governor Deal, thank you. For Georgia DOD, Governor Deal has authorized for us to bring up to 1,500 Airmen and Army Georgia Guardsmen. As we get requests for assistance from GEMA, we will bring those folks on board and execute. We currently have State Defense Force operations going on, and they are supporting shelters and distribution of supplies. The Georgia DOD stands ready to support the citizens of Georgia. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
We have also requested a federal declaration of emergency to provide the funding from the federal level to assist with the costs that are going to be associated with what has already happened in terms of cost of preparation, as well as what we're going to encounter as the storm passes through and leaves behind, hopefully not too bad of devastation, but nevertheless, we have made that request of the federal government. I've already been contacted by several federal secretaries, and they have all pledged their assistance and have already engaged with our Department of Emergency Management here at the state level. We have a FEMA presence that is already here as a part of this command center, and we thank them for their presence here. I'll open it up now for a few questions, and I'll call on the individuals who have more specific knowledge of their area if you direct questions specifically to a particular topic.
Governor,
yes.
I'm not sure which department this was covered. 23 years ago, Tropical Storm Alberto stalled out over this exact same area, and we saw devastating flooding, particularly from Lake Blackshear, the dam that collapsed. Have anyone been able to do dam assessments in that area to see if they're going to be able to hold all this water that we're expecting?
Well, I do recall that myself, and that was one that did stall and stayed there, and the flooding associated with it was tremendous. We're hopeful in that regard it will not be a repeat of that, because this is a relatively fast-moving hurricane. Although it is intense, while it is over an area, we're hopeful that it will not remain there for any extended period of time. But I'll ask anyone who might want to comment on that. Anybody?
I think the governor actually covered it very well, but just so you know, we have been in touch with the Corps of Engineers. They've been running models, and we don't see that as an issue this time for the reasons that the governor stated.
All right. Who else?
Governor, what advice do you have for residents who live in this part of Southwest Georgia?
Okay. I don't know who wants to talk about, you're talking about what to do about the residents themselves?
People who live there, what advice do you have for them?
Well, the advice that we have is the fact that we have declared this as a weather emergency, and a declaration that has gone all the way now to the White House. So they should take whatever preparations are available for them to prepare for the storm, to have supplies, etc., on hand if at all possible, to weather the duration of the aftermath of the storm when it passes through. We, as you have heard, we have areas that can accommodate those who choose to evacuate to our centers that we've already opened up. Red Cross has also opened up centers. I spoke to the CEO of the American Red Cross earlier today, and they have several facilities, including the Macon Coliseum, which appears to be fairly close to the center of the impact of this travel of this hurricane. We're trying to do everything we can to help them. Power loss is going to be one of the huge concerns in terms of trying to get back to normalcy. And it's going to require a lot of cooperation from the municipal electric utilities that provide service to much of this area, as well as our normal electricity providers. They'll all be working cooperatively to try to restore power as soon as possible, but it does take time.
But you're not recommending that Georgians leave their houses unless they feel compelled to do so?
No, we're not putting in place any kind of mandatory evacuations. We trust the judgment of Georgians to know what's best for them and under their circumstances. This is not like a coastal area where we have seen mandatory evacuations because of storm surge and other aspects of a hurricane that we would normally expect if it had hit the eastern seaboard of our state. This is one coming from the exact opposite direction. And I think we have covered it as well as we can. And I would also add that we have local jurisdictions with their local emergency management agencies and the people who work with them at their level, and they are making preparations as well, and they are in touch with our GEMA people to make sure that if they need extra help, they're the ones that will contact the state and ask for that assistance.
After having a near miss in Hurricane Florence for Georgia, are you worried about complacency?
Well, you know, we haven't cried wolf too often ourselves, and therefore I think when we do say that this is a serious matter, people hopefully will take us seriously in that regard. We obviously are concerned. It is unlike any storm that we have had in anybody's memory. We're not accustomed to the magnitude of a hurricane such as this hitting in the direction that it is traveling and with the intensity with which it will hit our state. So it's not going to be a simple walk away from it with no damage. It's going to be one of serious damage, and life should be the primary concern. Protect yourself, protect your family, help those who need assistance. Georgians are great people. They have big hearts, and they reach out to help their neighbor in need. This is a time when that is going to be called upon without any doubt. We will do everything we can at the state level and at the federal level to provide the support, but we can't do everything. People on the ground doing what they can do in their own community, that's going to be an important part of solving this problem successfully.
Governor, Secretary